I am Alfreda Coward, and I'm happy to serve as chair of this great division, solo small firm and general practice division. So we have a great program, as I indicated, lined up for you. We have a great speaker. We have great talent within our division, and all of our friends and sponsorships are great as well. So we are celebrating our sixth annual Powerful Speakers program today. We've had great women all up until this time. Not only do we have great women speakers, we also have great men who brave enough to join us and participate with us. Now, the one bad side to this whole program, we usually have some libations or some beverages, a few things to snack on. So this virtual world kind of denied us of that. So for those of you who at home already or may have a little something in your office, please feel free to help yourself, because we couldn't provide it to you this time. So we will make up for it with the next year, the year after that we continue this great program. And in talking about this great program, none of us would be here today if it wasn't for that visionary who happened to serve as past chair in this position. And she's also integral on the program today. And that is our past chair of the division, Melanie Bragg. This was her baby. She was passionate about it. And there was nothing anybody can do to stop her. And there's nothing anybody can still do to stop her now. So we continue on boldly. We continue on excitedly. And I'm going to turn it over to Mel so she can tell us more great things about the history of WIN and this great, powerful speaker series, and for the rest of our program. Melanie?
Thank you, Alfreda. We are just so proud of you. You get to be our first African-American female chair. So it's been really special for us to just honor you and support you this year. And you've done such a great job. You know, before I start talking about introducing our speaker and whatnot, I'd like to introduce your counterpart, which is the chair-elect of the Law Practice Division, Heidi Barkus. Heidi Barkus is president-elect of the Law Practice Division, and she's a medical malpractice defense partner with the firm of London Amber, which is a leading multi-service insurance defense healthcare law firm for physicians in Knoxville, Tennessee. She's board certified in medical professional liability by the American Board of Professional Liability Attorneys. She was named 2019 Best Healthcare Lawyer. She's also a super lawyer and past president of the Knoxville Bar Association. She serves on the board of governors for the Tennessee Bar Association. The partnership between GP Solo WIN and LP Women Rainmakers 5 years ago, the two groups, we have met every month for 5 years, and we just welcome Heidi to say a few words.
Thank you so much for having me, Melanie. I appreciate it. I am Heidi Barkus, chair-elect of the Law Practice Division, and we've been co-sponsoring this event for the last 5 years. And a lot of that credit goes to Tracy Ray, our current chair of the Law Practice Division. So thank you, Tracy, for all you've done and for making this event happen. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about our speaker, and I look forward to future events like this. And a special thanks to that Women Rainmakers Committee who have put this together and worked hard, and you're a valued part of the division, and just can't wait for what comes next. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Really appreciate you guys. Before I introduce our distinguished speaker, I need to go over a few housekeeping details for the Q&A program, part of our program. Please write the word question, preferably in all caps, in the chat feature so the moderator may easily distinguish it from the general chatting. And please remember to mute your mic if you're not speaking, and remember that you can be seen if your camera's on. We'll be streaming live on Facebook, so we encourage you to post on your Facebook page or Twitter using the hashtags @PresentandPowerful or @BelieveInYou, and then make sure and tag @GP Solo. The President and Powerful Women's Speaker Series was born 5 years ago at the Midyear meeting in Miami, the year after we presented our first program in San Diego. Kelly Moore, the chair of our WIN group, has worked hard with us these past 5 years, and we have met every month to plan the meetings. It's been a fun and collaborative process for the group. Our goal was to have a speaker from outside the law to talk to us on a topic of relevance to lawyers, preferably someone with a book. We invited our past speakers to attend this year since it's our 5th annual. And we have today Sharon Sales Belton, the first African-American and first woman to hold the position of mayor of Minneapolis, 1994 to 2001. And she's the current vice president of community relations and government affairs, Thomson Reuters Legal Business. And the Honorable Ava Guzman, a judge on the Texas Supreme Court. Judge Guzman has worked tirelessly to help the women and children in Texas, and she's a good friend of mine too. Sharon and Ava were on the Vote, Run, Lead 100 Years of Women in Politics panel at our last year's meeting. Our chair, Kelly, is from Georgia, and she had contacts with our speaker for this year with her law partner, who is here with us. And we are so grateful to have the globe-trotting Deborah Roberts, award-winning ABC News Correspondent, to talk to us today about Know Your Worth, the audacity to believe in you. Deborah is from Perry, Georgia, and she is married to Al Roker, NBC's Today Show, and they have 2 children. She has been on 2020, Nightline, Good Morning America, and ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, to name a few. Some of her major stories include interviewing Ivanka Trump just before Trump's inauguration and then covering the inauguration. She also did an in-depth interview with First Lady Michelle Obama. More recently, she's been covering the racial justice movement this past summer and fall. She had a very powerful interview on GMA with the mothers of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Botham Jean, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Antoine Rose, and Trayvon Martin, who have all lost a son or daughter. They shared their common bond in mourning and their journeys and sacrifices as Black mothers in America. Another great story she did was when Deborah sat down with 8 women of color that were running for Congress. And closer to home, she covered her brother-in-law's journey to finally get the championship ring that was so long denied. These links are to these stories are in the chat box, or they will be in the chat box. In 2016, Deborah and Al co-wrote a book called Been There, Done That, Family Wisdom for Modern Times. With 16 Emmys between them, they've covered just about every kind of subject possible, from the Olympics to the Gulf War to national disasters and the AIDS crisis in Africa. Deborah is no stranger to adversity in her life. She has life lessons, hard-won wisdom, and instructive family anecdotes to share with us. From dealing with obesity, growing up in the segregated South, to raising different types of children and balancing work and marriage. In these turbulent times we're living in, where we humans are faced with new challenges, seems like every day, uncertainty, climate change and what goes along with it, like losing your power, there is never a better time to discuss the greatest love of all for all of us, the love we have for ourselves. And we women and our men, we love our men, are often guilty of taking care of everyone but ourselves. Deborah is going to share with us the secrets she has learned to have the audacity to believe in you. Deborah?
Melanie, thank you so much. Nice to see you. And I want you to know too, first of all, that we are thinking about all of you in Texas. I know you're coming to us from Houston. I have relatives in Texas, and our hearts and our prayers are going out to you all. And I'm so happy to see you here. So first of all, let me say that. Secondly, let me just say, it's so great to see you all. You all look so great from afar. Anyway, I wish we could be there together and maybe elbow bump or virtual hug, smile through our masks if we could. But unfortunately, that's just not the way it worked out this year. But on the bright side, some of you might be wearing sweatpants and slippers, right? I might even be wearing sweatpants and slippers, but that's what you get to do when you work from home, right? And if Alfreda had mentioned that we could like have a little libation with this, I would have done that instead of just my cup of tea. So thanks a lot for that warning, Alfreda. But that's what it's all about right now these days. We are making it work. But seriously, we are in a very challenging time for all of us. And I am just so delighted to be able to be here with you as I look outside my window and watch the snow falling and sort of take in what is happening and virtually just be able to celebrate what is really this extraordinary time, but also a time of great positivity with you at the ABA and so much growth. Particularly with Alfreda Coward sharing this. And a little story I have to tell you, I can't can't see all of you out there, but I do know my dear friend Larry Walker and his wife Janice are in the audience. And Larry called me some time ago, almost about a year ago. You know, we look at everything these days as post-COVID and pre-COVID. I think it was pre-COVID. And he says, there's this great, conference, and Alfreda Coward is going to be chairing it. And I think it'd be great if you can come and do it. And there's no pressure. But if you can do it, it'd be great to do it. Well, when Larry Walker says you do it, I don't care. There's pressure. You're going to do it. So I am happy to be here with you all and to celebrate basically what I think, as much as things are difficult, I want to celebrate a glass that is half full at this present and powerful event. And I have to say, again, while I cannot see you, if I were there with you in person, I would say, look at all this estrogen in the room. I love being in a room filled with estrogen, but no offense, I know there are some guys out there and we need testosterone too. So it's great to have all of you here. I have to tell you, I must confess that whether in the room with you there or whether we're on Zoom, it is so great to be in the power of so many women and so many powerful women. And I want you to feel that, and I want you to know that you are powerful, forces to be reckoned with, whether you are practicing criminal law or civil law or corporate law, or whether you're not even really practicing so much like you used to anymore. Never forget that each one of you possesses some power. And I want to remind you of this because during a time when women are losing ground in their careers, paying a really steep price during this pandemic, we need to be reminded that we matter and that our work has purpose. It doesn't determine our value, let's remember that, but we certainly can add value in this world. So please don't forget that. Few things make me happier, I have to say, than celebrating the accomplishment of other women. One of the guiding forces in my life. And as all of you know, of course, we are celebrating Black History Month right now. And this week, after working from home and a little bit in the office here and there, but mostly working from home, I finally had an opportunity to go into our studio in Times Square. And I worked on a panel discussion with 3 accomplished women of color, 3 extraordinary women of color, to talk about our concerns and our hopes and our dreams and our despair in 2021. A shameless plug, it's going to air tonight. It's going to be streaming on ABC News Live, and I hope you all will watch it. But it was so great to be in the in the presence of engaging and inspiring and, yes, powerful women. Throughout my career, I have had the opportunity to travel all over this country, as you just heard Melanie say, and also around the world. And I am always curious about the plight of women wherever I go. Wherever I land, whether it is in Africa and Asia, where I've had an opportunity to report, or Tampa or Seattle, any place in this country, with the exception of economic status, education, or religion, I have discovered that women are more alike than we are different. We are protective of our families. We are averse to war and conflict. We are consummate multitaskers, which isn't always such a great thing. And we are driven to succeed at something. Women are very driven. Now, a few other facts about women, from the sobering to the sublime. We are industrious, no matter where we live, small business minded. In fact, before this conflict, women were running some of the biggest small businesses in this country. We are vulnerable around the world. 3 out of 4 women are casualties of war. We are brilliant. The 2 highest recorded IQ scores belong to, you guessed it, women. We are tenacious. Before the pandemic, as I said, women owned about 40% of all US businesses. Pre-coronavirus, 75% of us were working outside the household. And of course, yet we only make 77 cents to the dollar of most men, Black women 62 cents, and Hispanic women 52 cents. Which might explain why, when asked in a survey one time whether they'd rather have chocolate or sex, a lot of women wanted to know, what kind of chocolate? I mean, come on, we are exhausted, we are stressed out, and we want a treat. Pardon me for that, Larry, I had to throw that in. But all kidding aside, we are a strong force in numbers and in spirit. Acclaimed writer and New York Times columnist Nick Kristof wrote a column that eventually became a book. And he said, women hold up half the sky. We hold up half the sky. We account for about half of this country's population. We're graduating college at much higher rates than men. We are doing all kinds of things and juggling outside of our household. We get it done. And yet somehow we don't always realize our power. We truly have the ability to change the world if only we would believe it. Think about it. We have the power to change the world. Look what happened in Georgia. Women, particularly women of color, shifted the state's representation in Congress. Women drove the election of 2020, declaring their desires in the White House and in Congress. Women harnessed their power and made history. This is a subject that is urgent to me because I have a 22-year-old daughter, and it is my mission to help her realize her power. And you know, all of you out there know, when women are activated, there is no stopping us. It is something that I am reminded of when I look back in my early life and also through my work as a journalist. A few years ago, I had an opportunity to interview Laima Bowie. She is the African peace activist and Nobel Peace Laureate, who as a young woman in her 30s, led a revolution of women who ended the 13-year civil war in Liberia. Now, in the midst of the ravages of this brutal war, she was living in an abusive relationship. Her life was miserable, but she managed to find a light within. She recognized what the brilliant young poet Amanda Gorman recently told us, that there is light if you're brave enough to see it and brave enough to be it. Bowie organized women to take on the brutal dictator Charles Taylor. Day after day, hundreds of women organized by her confronted, agitated, and in a novel strategy, even agreed to deny their husbands sex until they would actually join the fight. Well, I don't have to tell you that there was urgency and the war ended pretty quickly. But this woman, a woman, led to the change of her country. Laima says it was in the depths of despair that led her really to discover her worth, the power that she had to change not only her life, but really to change her world. Later, she became one of 3 African women who shared the Nobel Peace Prize. Laima Bowie somehow had the audacity to believe that she had something extraordinary to give. She was brave enough to see and to be the light. Laima would tell you that she was something of an unlikely success story, one that one might not have necessarily predicted. And that's something that I know a thing or two about. It still astounds me when I am standing before, typically, but today sitting before a group like you, because really when I look back on my life growing up, I too am kind of an unlikely success story. Now, though I live a life of, great privilege in New York City on the Upper East Side, and I am privileged to send my children to top tier schools and to travel the world with this network television career of mine, this might not have been the life that some would have predicted for me. I grew up in post-segregated Deep South, Deep Georgia South, one of 9 children, 7 girls. Imagine that, 1 bathroom in the house. If only you could only imagine what was happening in our house in the mornings, but nurtured, a big family nurtured by the love and guidance of 2 hardworking parents, neither of whom graduated from high school. When I was sick, I recall waiting in the colored waiting room of Dr. John Hendrick's office, which was essentially a porch. Yes, the colored waiting room. I lived in an underdeveloped section of town in an underserved part of the community and went to the Houston County Training School, a segregated school, up until 4th grade. Life was challenging for us and for everyone in my town. My mother and my father both worked in a local factory until my father was able to save enough money over the years to begin a small carpet business where he installed carpet. Both of my parents labored under the indignities of the Jim Crow South, but both of them managed to see light in the cracks of that dark system. They both held on to a dream for their children. My mom, in particular, was determined that we would all have a chance at dreams that she never even could think about. It was in that small home in segregated Georgia where I learned lessons that really sustain me to this day, lessons that I take with me everywhere I go, whether on assignment in Bangladesh, where I reported on maternal mortality, or in Tennessee, speaking with a mom who was processing the death of her teen daughter, or whether just dealing with office politics. I draw on the example set by a strong mother, a steel magnolia, a woman who, despite her lack of a formal education, because she had to quit school to help her family, who had a strong belief in a woman's destiny and a woman's power. In fact, my mom was something of an early feminist, even though I don't think she knew it. I'll never forget one day in the late 70s, my mom used to make her own clothes. And one day she came walking out of her bedroom down into the kitchen wearing pants. Now, that may sound a little bit ridiculous, and you may laugh, but in the Deep South, ladies wear dresses and they wore pantyhose, even in 98-degree weather. My mom had decided she'd had enough of that. She had a strong sense of her destiny and of her self-worth. Now, at times, it caused a little bit of friction with my father, who couldn't quite make sense of her steely will. But my mom believed that a woman had a right to set her own agenda. And while she never had the opportunity or the option to have her own dreams in the Jim Crow South, she wanted more for her own children. She encouraged all of us, and her daughters in particular, to find a dream and to just go for it. Nobody would sit idle in my mom's home. Idle hands were the devil's workshop. I joined summer reading clubs and the Girl Scouts and neighborhood social groups. And while there were some opportunities that were denied us because of the color of our skin, my mom managed to mostly shield her children from this sting of segregation, getting us involved in things that we could do, focusing on what was available instead of what wasn't. She managed to somehow instill in us feelings that we were special and also believing in us. She believed in me. And fortunately for me, someone else outside of my home did too. An unlikely woman who touched my life, sparking a flicker that would later emerge into a flame just after segregation had ended. It was my 6th grade English teacher, Mrs. Dorothy Hardy, and she changed my life with just a few words that I really still remember to this day. I'll never forget her. She had a shock of white hair. She had ruby red lipstick and garnet nails. And she had a very syrupy drawl, and she talked to you with a real Southern manner. She was very no nonsense. She rarely smiled, and she would circle your mistakes on your papers with red ink. She meant business. Kids feared Mrs. Hardy. But I was intrigued by this stern woman who demanded excellence, proper grammar, diagrammed sentences, and poetry readings. I wanted to impress her. So I began to excel in her class. And one day she pulled me aside and she said to me words that I really still remember. She said in that Southern way, "Deborah, you're a real smart girl. You're going to go real far in life." Well, just imagine what that meant to this little Black girl growing up post-segregated South, hearing your teacher say, she believes in you, that you have something special. And I had the audacity to believe her. And it may explain why I am sitting here in front of you right now. She changed my life with those few words. I have heard Mrs. Hardy's encouraging words echoing in my mind over the course of my career, when there were times I doubted myself. I just didn't know if I had what it took to succeed. And I think many of you probably can relate to that, because each one of us, and women in particular, at some point in life is just waiting for somebody to remind you that you matter, that you're worthy, that you possess something special. and that you have something to contribute to this world, to make a vital difference. The trick is believing it. When I began my television career in Columbus, Georgia, working for a brash and chauvinistic news anchor who called me honey, I shuddered, and I did like so many of you have probably done. I just sort of shrugged off the sexism, and I summoned up the courage to ignore him and to look past it, finding and reporting interesting local stories, dreaming of something bigger, trying to learn my craft and trying to make a name for myself. I'll show him, I thought to myself, even with my insecurities, believing deep down that I had something going on. I had something special. Well, years later, when I snagged my next job, making my way up the ladder in television with yet another chauvinistic news director in Orlando, Florida, there's a pattern here, you might notice. He loved my work and he liked me a lot, as long as I didn't demand too much and I didn't demand as much pay as some of my male colleagues. At the time, he would say, yeah, it's coming, stalling. Well, when he offered me a promotion to the anchor desk with a lower salary than my male co-anchor, I silently fumed, knowing that I deserved more, that I deserved better. After doing the job for a while and excelling, I eventually found the courage, again, to demand more. Suddenly, he didn't like me so much. He balked, and I decided to walk out the door and landed eventually at NBC News, something he didn't see coming. See, my mother didn't raise a dumb girl. As I climbed the career ladder, it wouldn't be the last time that I would face this kind of dilemma as a woman, and particularly as a woman of color. There were countless times where I know that I was passed up for an assignment or offered a raise that really paled in comparison to my male colleagues. At times, I was angry and discouraged, but I stayed the course, just as many of you have done over the years, I'm sure. And sometimes staying the course makes all the difference. Well, later in my career, after marriage, I wanted to start a family, even though it wasn't easy for a woman who is ambitious in network television. Many of my role models were single or childless or both. The message seemed to be pretty clear that successful women just couldn't seem to have it all. But I wanted it all. I was determined that I was going to try to have it. After a miscarriage, my husband and I tried again, and joyfully, we became pregnant. I was thrilled beyond belief, never expecting that this joy would soon be clouded by a career-altering decision. Late in my pregnancy, I was offered a major anchor gig, the kind of career achievement that I had dreamt of, anybody in television dreams of. Finally, I had reached my ultimate goal. But after working so hard to begin a family, and as a mature pregnant woman, as my doctor advised me in my late 30s, I was facing a kind of delicate situation. I could have my baby and race back to work, as so many women do, chasing my dream, leaving the house at the crack of dawn at the same time as my husband, who was also working a very early morning shift, turning my precious baby over to a nanny. Or I could make a heart-wrenching sacrifice. It was difficult. I chose my daughter. It was an excruciating moment. Choosing my daughter was not a big question for me in my heart, but what to do with my career. In my heart, I knew what I needed to do. Now, some of you know where this story is going. You've been there. After declining my big job, once I came back to work, my career was a little bit different. Suddenly, the big assignments didn't come my way. The glow of excitement around me and my work seemed to dim. I learned what so many women before me had discovered, that corporations don't always value ambitious women who put a premium on their families. Suddenly, I was perceived, it seemed to me, to be on the mummy track. It was frustrating and demoralizing. One day I was on my way to television stardom. The next, I was just another reporter trying to just make it through. I was angry. I was discouraged. I wanted to move on, and in truth, I actually wanted to give up. But like Lame Bowie in inside of me, I sort of found that light, that little flicker of the flame that had been lit so long ago remained inside. I swallowed hard. I moved forward, taking smaller assignments that I was offered, fighting hard to get others, and slowly, slowly began to make my way back on my career track. I found solace in my new family as I created a new set of goals with the support of my devoted husband. I slowly began to take on bigger assignments and even won an Emmy Award along the way. It wasn't easy, but I preserved my priorities and I stayed in the game. I believed that I had something to offer, that I was worthy of a network career, but I had to believe in me and stay in the game. As my mentor and colleague Barbara Walters said once to me, sometimes you have to just outlast your detractors. Stay in the game. Well, today, many years later, things are a little different. The landscape is slightly smoother for high-powered women who want a balanced life. But let's face it, we are still fighting a lot of the same old battles. Men, for the most part, still run the show, though we have seen great success like you've seen here at ABA. In the media, though, while we've seen some executive positions filled by women, we've also lost a lot of ground, just as we've seen in corporate America. After years of seeing women soar, we are now witnessing yet another decline. I don't have to tell you that women graduate at the same rate as men from law school, but they drop off later in greater numbers. Women at equity partner level has been stagnant at about 20% now for years. And get this, only 2% for women of color. And early studies show that after taking a big hit during this global pandemic, carrying more than our share of the load at home while juggling careers, virtually, and losing businesses and clout at work, or just many people are just throwing in the towel, it may take years for women to make up the lost ground. And it's not exactly as if things were going completely smoothly before. It's as if the powers that be seem to feel satisfied that women have had a shot, that things look good, the playing field seems to be leveling, we've overcome, so there's no need to stress about it anymore. Well, nothing can be further from the truth, and I think we all know this. When I sit in a Zoom meeting with executives, the faces of power, the decision makers in the room, are still mostly men, mostly white men. Yes, we have made some progress at my network, and particularly over the last few months, we've made some really great strides. But I think we all know that there's still work to do. I absolutely believe that change is possible, but it's going to take time. And in the meantime, like many of you, I continue to steel myself as I step into the world, a virtual world these days, and draw on those lessons of inspiration that remind me that I am smart, that I am capable, that I am powerful, and that I am worthy. And fortunately, we are in a country, as fragile as we may be at this moment, where you can change your destiny if you are willing to envision something greater. But you have to decide that you are deserving and that you are worthy. And speaking of your worth, it doesn't just include career success. We've got to remember, as Melanie mentioned earlier, to take care of ourselves. Since this is Heart Health Month, I feel compelled to mention something. We are taking care of ourselves, ladies. While we may be struggling to pull even with men in corporate America, you know the one place where we have pulled even and may even be overtaking them? Heart disease. That's right, heart disease. Some of you may already know this, but heart disease is now the leading killer of women. 1 in 5 of us dying from it. And during the pandemic, our health is taking a greater hit. With all of these Zoom meetings and worries about life, we are stressed greater than ever before. The usual family responsibilities are piling up. Kids learning virtually, spouses who may be out of work, older parents who may be ailing. And we're doing what we always do. aren't we, ladies? Looking after everyone else and putting ourselves last. Well, that has got to stop. How many of you have gone for a walk in the last day or two? Or even better, how many of you have attempted to work out or done yoga in the last day or two? You know how they warn you on the airplane that before you put on an oxygen mask for your child, you should put it on yourself so you can make sure you take care of somebody else? We need to do that in life. Put on your oxygen mask first. Put on that N95 on top of that and take care of you so that you can take care of others. If ever there was a time to prioritize yourself, this is it. Self-care is as important as healthcare. So do yourself and do your family a favor. Exercise, go for a walk, eat healthier, do some meditation, give yourself a facial, make yourself important. And while you're at it, be gentle and forgiving of yourself. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book with my husband. Been there, done that. Family wisdom for modern times, as you just heard. It's kind of his version and her version, basically the right version, her version, the wrong version, his version. But we both gave our take on life. And I write about something that how we as women often put so much pressure on ourselves and we rarely cut ourselves some slack that we deserve in our quest to excel. We just aren't giving ourselves enough of a break. And I told a story of how one night I was asking my husband as we were winding down and we had put the kids to bed, and I was asking him if he ever worried, if he ever just felt so insecure that you're just blowing it. You're not doing as great a job as a parent. Do you ever feel like you're just screwing it all up? And I looked at him and he looked at me and said without missing a beat, no, I actually think I'm doing a pretty good job. I was stunned. I couldn't believe he was feeling zero self-doubt about himself as a parent. And later, I realized something that I'm still thinking about to this day, that it wasn't so much that he was feeling superior or that he was lacking in insecurity. He was simply focusing on what he was doing right and not on what he felt he was doing wrong. He had picked up the kids from school one day, taken my son to Taekwondo. He had helped one of them with a project the other night and made dinner a couple of nights that week. He was forming his self-worth on his positive attributes and not on the negative. So ladies, let me be one to say, take a page from men, remember what you did well, and don't focus on what you did that you feel was not so great. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. As Maya Angelou says, you may not control all of the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. We have come a long way since that Helen Reddy song when she declared, "I am woman, hear me roar." Yes, we have roared, and we have made some big gains in years past. But we all know that there are gains to be made, that there is work to be done, more work, if we want to see our daughters and yes, our sons right alongside them inherit a world of inclusion and fairness that we all envision. We can help make that happen. But it's up to us, each one of us, to demand change, to have the audacity to demand the kind of future and the kind of world that we know is possible. And ladies, we can play a major role in making that happen. Now, I don't mean to burden us because we always feel like there's so much more that we have got to handle, but there's also a sisterhood. We can link arms in a sisterhood and push through together. We don't have to make change alone. The key is just knowing that we can do it. The power is in our hands collectively. Remember, we hold up half the sky. Thank you all so much for taking a moment with me with these thoughts. I hope they are helpful, and I am happy to hang around and take some questions.
Thank you, Deborah. That I had goosebumps and tears in my eyes the entire time. I mean, you pretty much hit on everything. Right now, we're going to have Natalie Runyon. She is the Director, Enterprise Content, Talent, Culture, and Inclusion Specialist for Thomson Reuters. Our sponsor, Thomson Reuters, is one of our sponsors of our division for many years, and they also have just jumped on board with our program. So Natalie, take the floor, and we've got some good questions. I saw those in the chat, so let's have some fun here.
Hey, Natalie.
And also, y'all, if I have to jump in and interrupt, if Reggie comes back, he was here, he's our president-elect of the ABA. If he comes back, or if Trish comes in, the president of the ABA, we're going to just interrupt and then take them in, because we want to catch them and let them be a part of this. So I don't want to be rude, but I have to do that because they're really pulled in a whole bunch of different directions. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, perfect. And I think we're going to have Sharon Zales-Belton and possibly Ava Guzman as well. But hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today. I think this is my third Present and Powerful event that I've been involved with. So I'm really happy to be here on behalf of Thomson Reuters and our Transforming Women's Leadership program. So Deborah, we have a lot of questions to get to. I hope we are able to get to most of them. But the first one has to do—
I'll speak fast. I'm from the South.
Okay, good. Me too. So Brene Brown's work on vulnerability and courage has suggested that we can't be brave without being vulnerable. What are your thoughts on this? And do you consider women's vulnerability to be part of the their inherent presence and power?
That's a very interesting comment, and I have heard that before. And and let me just start off by saying I don't feel like I have the answer to everything, and some of you may not necessarily agree with my take on some things. I think you have to be vulnerable, but I think it's hard because as women, and particularly women who grew up during a certain era, some of us, when women were still sort of making our way, and it wasn't a given. We weren't seeing women in certain capacities that we are today. You felt you couldn't be vulnerable. You didn't want to show that soft side. You thought you had to be tough. I mean, I remember when I started out in television, I used to wear like that power bow tie with my suits and so forth. And I didn't want to show any vulnerability because you thought you had to be tough. But at the end of the day, I think it is something that makes us special as women because it's especially with each other, we are willing to show vulnerability because we have emotional centers that we will tap into in our work. I think it is something that can help us be brave. But I think when we are hiding from that, that might be the thing that blocks us from showing our bravery. And also the vulnerability to me is the thing that fires me, sometimes fires me up. And I find I summon that courage and I summon that bravery just because I'm allowed to tap into my vulnerability. But it is not something that is easy because I think society kind of frowns on that, less so now, but certainly a lot more when I was coming into the business. But I do believe that showing some vulnerabilities can be a sense of strength.
I completely agree. And it reminded me, because you talked about, finding your light in your talk. And sometimes you find that light through your vulnerability because it's what makes you human. And that's how you connect with people on another level.
I think so.
Our next question has to do more along enjoying the journey. So you talked about in your own life, having to make a choice between your career and your daughter when you first had her. And maybe that took a more meandering career path than you would have seen had you chose to, go to work rather than, choosing your daughter, like you said. But what suggestions do you have for women to stay inspired and motivating when pursuing the goals, when you may have to take an unexpected route or life throws you something where you have to there's a fork that you have to choose? What are your thoughts?
I think, my thoughts are you always have to go inside and you have to think what works, what's best for you. And what worked for me may not necessarily be what you hear that inner voice telling you to do. So first of all, I think you've got to really know yourself. Everybody is different. Not every woman wants to ascend at the same rate. Not every woman is aspirational and wants that corner office or that top job. So I think you first have to know yourself and know what's important to yourself. And I truly meant it when I said that sometimes you have to just stay in the game. I mean, I look at where I am right now at ABC News 2020, and of course, my business has just evolved and changed, and things have been streamlined. And like many of us, many of you in corporate America, our businesses have shrunk, so we don't have the same numbers of people doing what we used to. But I am the only remaining member of 2020 from that original cast that was there when I first arrived. Now, for various reasons, people moved on or whatever. But my husband has often said to me, and he's like my biggest cheerleader, he says to me, you just hang in there, even when things get discouraging. You keep hanging in there. And many times it is easy to just say, I've had it. I feel demoralized. I feel, angry. I feel upset, and to want to leave. And I'm not saying that you don't demand more in the process. You have to find a way, I think, to speak up for yourself. But I think sometimes just hanging in there, then all of a sudden there's a new administration. There's a new boss. There's a new, head of, whatever, CEO of the company. And it may be somebody who sees you in a very different light. So I think sometimes just hanging in there is key. And I think also just knowing in your heart what works for you. For some people, it may not be to hang in there, but I think if you have your eye on a certain ball, and you see something ahead for yourself, I think sometimes hanging in can really, really be key.
That's great. Our next question has to do with how do women, especially women of color, set an expectation of not allowing reducing or being reduced by others? And it comes in the context of perhaps a work environment where mostly men are in power, or where there's a dog-eat-dog culture.
Again, everybody is different. But for me, I draw on my Southern roots, and I really mean that. I'm a Southern girl. And what I mean by that is there's a gentility that I think bring to my approach to a lot of things. I have a sense of diplomacy about me when I'm talking to people. I have a sense of, sort of warmth and family, because that's who I am as a Southerner. And I bring that to the table. And I think that there have been many times where I have wanted to go off on somebody when I felt like maybe they didn't handle it right, or they didn't talk to me in a way that, obviously nobody wants to put up with anybody who's being disrespectful. But I personally feel like there is a way to approach people. And I don't think you have to call people out in a way that is embarrassing. I don't think you have to call people out in a way that is public necessarily. You can. I don't like to feed into a stereotype. And so I think over the years have found a way to approach people in a way with dignity and with strength, and to convey my message. So I think people who work with me know that I don't get upset that often, and I certainly don't feel like I am a unreasonable person, but they know now and again, if I am a little upset or if I am a little firm about something, that it means business, because I don't do it very often. So I think you reserve and you find and pick your battles and pick your time, because we all know that we are up against it as women, and particularly for me, a woman of color. You're up against a wall many times. And so it's all about how you approach, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that has held me in good stead over the years. And I think it has also delivered for me respect from colleagues, because I think they see me as somebody who is reasonable, somebody who is approachable, but somebody who can be tough when I need to be.
Such a great answer. And, picking your battles, I feel like that's something that I have to choose every day, whether it's work.
Well, we all do.
Whatever.
Yeah,
exactly.
we all do.
Exactly.
And I've worked with interns like that. And I worked with an intern last year, a young woman of color. And she, again, this generation is very different. It makes me sound old fogey, but, the way they have these demands for life to be just so, and for life to be just perfect. And they shouldn't have to put up with certain things. Well, a lot of us in this audience have put up with a lot of things over the years. And I had she came to my office and we had a conversation about it. And I essentially said to her, you've got to decide, what you're willing to put up with, for what it's worth to you, what you want out of it, what you're willing to put up with. And I'm not saying in any way that you have to sort of diminish yourself, but you've got to pick your battles, because we're not going to overturn, there's not going to be, a gender revolution overnight. So we've got to work with the system and figure out a way to get what you want.
So we only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure I get to all the questions. The next one has to do with being a woman of integrity and choosing principle, PLE, over PAL, principle. So as a distinguished and accomplished woman who, and someone who has chosen principle, PLE, what would you tell little girls today going forward?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I don't think it's a very simple question, but I mean, I think the same thing I tell my daughter, and, you know, which is, you know, I think you've got to know yourself. You've got to know what you want. I think you've got to make some decisions about how much, you know, and how much you value what it is you want, but also too, you know, yes, we want an equal playing field. We want a world that is fair, but the world is not fair and the world is not easy. And I would say you have to decide how to approach that and really, you know, to sort of, much like I said, to sort of find that light within, to sort of guide you, to find mentors, to find people to help guide you, but to know that you can balance strength and vulnerability and, you know, and go for your goals. But it's really about keeping your eye on the prize. Keeping your eye on the prize and deciding, you know, what feels right for you, but what you're willing to put up with.
Great advice. The next question has to do with women supporting women. So what are your thoughts about how women make meaningful strides to collaborate with each other and promote change together? So for example, women lawyers know how to advocate. We know how to benefit from partnering with our sisters in media to help raise awareness about dire changes needed in education, healthcare, and childcare to help women feel less pulled in all directions. So what would you say about the need for women collaborating, but also supporting one another in an organization to kind of pull your power, right? And if you're trying to advocate.
Well, I would say, and I feel very strongly about this, I think that women sometimes, and I'm just going to be honest, I think we can be our worst enemies. And I think women, even though we like the concept and we say that we cooperate and we collaborate, women don't always necessarily support other women. Now, we are not monolithic. We don't all think alike. We don't all think politically alike, religiously alike. We are different. So, you know, just because I support you doesn't necessarily mean that I, you know, support all the principles that you believe in. But I think that women can do a better job in supporting other women. I think because for so long, there were so few women in positions that we sort of like maybe almost felt like we clawed at each other, because if she got the promotion, then that means I'm not going to get the promotion. If this person was elevated, then maybe I don't have a shot. And I think that we have to really mean it when we say that we want to support other women. We don't have to believe everything in its entirety in terms of, you know, our philosophies about life and policies. But I think that we do need to do a better job of looking at other women and giving them the benefit of the doubt, doing things to help them. And doing things to boost them. You know, one of the big phrases out of these last few years is amplifying. If you're in a meeting with a woman or with a few, you know, a big group of people, and there's only one or two women in the room, and we all know that whole thing where a woman says something and nobody listened, and then the guy said the same thing, and somebody said, "Oh, that was brilliant," right? Well, if some woman in the room made the comment and she got overlooked, I think another woman should say, "Well, so, you know, Sally just said, that's, you know, whatever." And that's a great idea. Amplify other women, really lift them up, because we say we want to do that, but we don't always do that.
That's a great point. Well, thank you so much. We didn't get to all the questions, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And I'm going to turn it back over to Melanie.
Thank you.
Boy, we have some really good questions and I'm so happy we had such great questions. Thank you, Deborah. That was just so wonderful. And we have one last little bit of business to do, because we want to give our newest sponsor a little little clip of time to state a little bit about what how do I say it? Anaqua. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm trying to hit it on all cylinders. Jane Durden is the Vice President of Law Firm Strategy at Anaqua, our newest premier sponsor this year. We welcome them to our group of dedicated sponsors, and Jane works closely with the Anaqua law firm client community to bring their needs to the forefront, and she collaborates with the Anaqua product team to translate those needs into IP platform enhancements. Anaqua is committed to helping lawyers meet their data management, practice, and business needs. Jane?
Thank you. Thanks, Melanie. And thanks, Alfreda. And Deborah, what an inspiring evening. Just amazing. So I'm here to talk to you about the company I work with, but just to give you an indication, my background is passionately in believing that the power of technology helps us to ensure that division of work within law firms and within our workplace is handed out based on merit, capacity, and capability, not on any of our external bases. So we believe very passionately in enabling people within inside law firms and organizations, and also enabling flexibility. And this is the power of technology. So NACWA is a premium provider of innovation and intellectual property management solutions for corporations and law firms. So we help innovators and their law firms manage patents and trademarks better, more safely, and efficiently. We work with some really amazing, well-known brands that you're interacting with every day, and incredibly innovative companies, and smaller entities that are starting out and know that intellectual property protection is really critical to growing a healthy and strong business, and really critical to our society. What we hear is that corporations need their law firms, and they need their outside counsels to be helping them in intellectual property management. And so what we're endeavoring to do is to make sure that lawyers, outside counsel lawyers, work more closely with their clients. The law firms that we work with range from huge multinational corporation law firms to sole practitioners and general practice firms with IP departments and boutique practices. And we strive to make sure that we're supporting all of these different kinds of practice. Regardless of size, we provide software that helps you stay ahead of the complex deadlines and workflows that are required. We provide automation, expertise, so you can shine with best practice workflows, big data analytics, and tech-enabled services. If this sounds interesting to you, or you know someone that's interested in doing that, I'd love to chat to see how we can help you, and we can make sure that you and your practice flourishes. Thanks for having us tonight.
Thank you so much, Jane. Alfreda, close us up, girl.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane, for your being a sponsor with the NACWA. We appreciate you greatly. We have, but they were not the only sponsors. When you have a great program and you have great women, of course, everybody wants to get on the team. So we've been blessed to have some team members along the way for the entire time that we've been having this program. So I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. We have our premier sponsor, which is Thomson & Reuters, who's been supporting this event for the last 4 or 5 years, and also many other endeavors that we participate in. We have Counsel Law PC, where we have Christy that serves as one of our GP Solo members, and she's been a supporter of this event. We have Petrosic Law, which is also Kari, who's been a member, one of the hard-working champions of this. She's been in the trenches with Melanie and Kelly throughout the entire time to make sure this has been great programming. And then we have Walker, Hulbert, Gray, and Moore behind. Where's she at? Our strong sister on here, Kelly Moore. She likes to stay. Here she is. I see her coming in the video now. She likes to stay behind the scenes, but she works her butt off, whether she's in front of the scene or behind the scenes. So thank you, Kelly. We have some entities that have been our co-sponsors with us, and we have ABA Tort Trial and Insurance Practice Session. We have the ABA Retirement Funds, Tabs 3 Software. And then we have our sponsors who've been in here, who've been meeting with us for the last 5 years monthly, making sure we bring you powerful women who are going to be present in the room at all times. And that's the Law Practice Division and our women Rainmakers. But I'll be remiss if I would not give a huge shout out to our speaker, our keynote address for the day, Deborah Roberts. We want to thank you for being real, for giving us frank, genuine advice, and not shying from telling us like it is. You said someone told you that you had the audacity to believe in yourself. Well, those who have heard me talk, I've told the story before that my mom told me I was all of that and some, and I dare believe her. So. So I know a little bit of something about somebody telling you you're important and you believe it and you run with it. So thank you for instilling that in all of our participants. Thank you for helping to show the women and share with them that we have all the power that we need. And to, the men that's in here, of course, we love you too. And we're not saying we have more power. We're just going to share some of that power. And we thank you for supporting all of this programming all these years. We have a lot of supportive men that's been here. So I want to thank all of you as well. I think that's it. I think I've gotten all the sponsors. I want to thank all of our participants for being here with us. We're running a couple minutes over, but we hope you enjoyed the program. We hope you enjoyed our keynote address and enjoying the production that's oftentimes annually put on. So put it in your calendars real early. You got a running start. February, mid-year next year, we will be here again, and hopefully we will be having our libations and our and our snacks at said time. Otherwise, we're limited to tea like our speaker have, or modified tea, which I'm having. So thank you all again. And we wish that you each have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye-bye. And thanks for all the
Appreciate
nice
y'all.
messages, everyone. Thank you.